Settle down, guys. Settle down. Welcome into another episode of the Young Dad Podcast. I'm your host, Jay. I'm super excited for today's episode because we get some three-way action today. Take that for what you will and however you will. I'm joined by the hosts of Round Dad Roundtable, Clayson and Jake. They are both dads. They have both been dads for, well, at least since 2023. Uh, and so I'm super excited to bring them on, talk to them a little bit, and engage with them, and talk about some pretty cool things today. So, gentlemen, I'll give you guys a chance to introduce yourselves. Before I do that, you guys are longtime best friends, and you guys just like talking about your lives as Rad Dads. So, tell us a little bit more about the Rad Dads, if you will.
I'm Clayson, and I like to think rad for a little while, but I've been a dad since September, so it's been an exciting journey.
I've been a dad since 2016, and so it's been wild. Been just learning how to be a dad.
So, what's that experience been like for you guys? For going from, or I guess let me ask this: are you guys both married, or with your children, the mother of your children?
We're both married. Yeah.
Okay, very cool. So, what is that? And you guys both only have one kid?
Of three.
Okay, Jake, you have three. Clayson has one. So,
Yes, sir.
Clayson, since you're the youngest dad of the group here in terms of being a dad, what has that experience been like for you? Then Jake, I'll jump to you. Clayson, what's it been like for you going from no kids to one kid, and how has your first 4 months been as a dad? How tired are you?
My sleep is cut in half. I feel like I wasn't sleeping much to begin with, but that's all changed since the kiddo came around. But yeah, everything is it's like upside down in the best way. It really they say like it changes your life, but like literally everything changes once they come. But it's good. It's good. I love it. There's nothing like it.
100%. Can 100% attest to that. And then for you, Jake, what's it been like going from 0 and then to 1 and then to 2 and then to 3? You have me on the amount of kids. We're about even with time. I became a dad in 2017, so we're pretty close in our dad age, respectively. But you have me beat in terms of X factor, how many times you're multiplying that by. So what's that been for you for going from no kids to one kid to two kid to three kids? Like, tell us about that journey for you guys.
I think for me personally, the jump from 0 to 1 is pretty big, but then from like from 1 to 2 was astronomical in the way that like sleep works and like those kind of things. To where like my wife is like the primary breadwinner of the household. She has more education than I do. She's a kindergarten teacher. I've always worked IT like part time, and so but then going from 2 to 3 was not bad. I mean, the jump was not terrifying. I was used to it. I was tired for like 4 years, and I'm good now. I got the hang of it.
I love that. So what are the age gaps for your kids, Jake? How much distance do you have between your offspring?
I have a 19-month. I have my little girl. My youngest daughter's about to be 5 here in a few days, and then I have a 7-year-old, and so all kinds of fun.
Very cool. Very cool. Mine are 2-ish years apart. The oldest one was out of diapers and potty trained before the second one came along. That was kind of my end all be all rule. So Clayson, if you guys are planning on having any more kids, that's kind of the rule for me that I tell everyone. I'm like, well, make sure your first one's out of diapers before you put the next one in diapers, to kind of save yourself a little bit on the cost there, because that's just one steady cost throughout time. Is that you go from you're always just buying diapers. It's fine. It's like you don't even realize it at a point. But then when you have to double the diapers, that's when it's like, whew, man, I need to get these kids potty trained. So for you guys, what are some of the best moments been becoming dads? Like what are some of the biggest and brightest spots that you guys just absolutely love about being dads?
Um, man, I never knew, like, as far as like people go, as far as like your family goes, that you could love something so much. And I tell people about this all the time, but it's like, you love your wife more than your own life, and that's pretty standard. But like the kid comes along, and um, it's like it's so strange because it's like the most passionate like love, like without taking anything from your wife, your significant other, but it's like it's just exponential, and that's just been really great.
Jake, how about for you?
I think for me, everything. Gosh, I guess I saw like the potential and like the peak of it when my oldest daughter started talking around 2, like very clear sentences, very well. We were having a conversation, and she was still in like a baby car seat, and I was like, my gosh, like I don't know, it was so because like with what Clayson was saying about how you don't like have to split your love between like your wife and your child now. Like it's like a DLC, like a bonus.
Yes.
Um, but like I guess what's so crazy is just to like see the creativity and like um, I'm sure we'll get into it eventually, but like how I'm not trying to put my desires and stuff on my kids, but to see like kind of what's already in them begin to like break the surface and like bloom into creativity and like nurturing that rather than trying to prune it all away to make it what I want it to be. Does that make sense?
100%. Let's jump into that a bit cuz that's a great thing to talk about cuz it's very common. So I work in mental and behavioral health personally. I'm a mental health clinician. I work with youth and families. It's very well known, I believe, to the listeners at this point. Uh, but I see it all the time that parents, and I'm guilty of it from time to time, kind of pushing what I want, on my kids, pushing what I want them to do, pushing or parents are pushing what they want to do on their kids, not letting them really have the space, the creativity, the ability to really be who they are and who they're meant to be, who their soul tells them they are, who they were created to be, essentially. You know, some of the influence has been really fun. My oldest daughter, she loves Pokemon. We share that together. That's like our thing. She loves it. She's still into it. She watches it. She collects cards. She always wants Pokemon stuff. She's kind of taken that and ran with it. One thing that I have kind of pushed on her is just really engaging in like team sports and playing baseball. And she knows like baseball is like, it's basically a family value. It's like a core value of our family. It's baseball. And she's coming around to liking it. She doesn't mind it. She likes playing. She thinks it's fun. She has her moments where she's just like, I don't want to play this year. When does the season start? But I don't want to play this year. But when does it start? How much longer? And I'm like, yesterday you literally said you didn't want to play. I'm like, this is why I signed you up anyway, because you're 6 and you can't make this kind of decision. But then it's funny because my younger daughter, who's 3, will sit and watch football with me. And she'll just sit and watch the game with me. Or she'll watch basketball with me. Or she'll just sit and watch the game. I don't think she understands what's going on, but she just likes to sit there and watch the sports with me. And that's super cool because my older one will excuse herself to her room and go put on a kid show or something on Netflix or whatever she wants to watch in her room while we just are out there watching TV or doing something while a game's on. She'll play with her Play-Doh, but she doesn't mind it. She likes to sit there and kind of soak it all in. So that's something that's been really interesting is seeing her develop in the way that like it's sports and seeing how all your different kids have different hobbies and things. Like my older one really likes art and drawing. My little one, she loves Play-Doh and like hands-on kind of thing. She's more the builder. She likes the sensory input kind of thing. My older one likes the artistic input. That's how her brain works, to like color and to draw and to write things out. Her literary skills are incredible for her age. She's in the 95th percentile on her testing for reading, which was absolutely mind blowing. Uh, but also not at the same time. I was like really not surprised. Math skills are a little bit lower. She's only in like the 74th percentile or something, well above state average. But being in that 74th percentile range, you can see like kind of where her passions are, what she really likes. And so that's really interesting, is being able to see, like you're saying, the people that they shape out to be. So how have you guys, or I guess mostly Jake, how have you? Sorry, Clayson, you're not there yet. We'll get there. But how have you really worked with your kids, or let them kind of mold into who they are as people?
I would say, one of our core values is creativity, and I know it's like so broad, but it's so. I feel like where it's so broad, it's easier to cultivate. And so whether it's uh, like I like to draw, I like to make comics. I'm not great at it. I'm more for the story, I guess, than for like the actual visual appeal. And my daughter like sees this, and from an early age, like she began to draw. And I heard a statistic one time that was talking about how like so many children, like when they're young, they're creative, they draw at like this genius level, and like for their age, and they continue to grow. But by the time they're like 14, like it's like gone. Like they've been told they can't do this and they can't do that, and they believe that, and they've like adapted that. And so like a part of like I guess what we really try to be intentional about is if someone says like she can't draw or she can't do this or she can't do that, because like I'm like an avid musician as well. And so like to let her like go and just play on the piano, it doesn't always sound good. You know what I mean? But it's like that's how they learn, is like through play, if that makes sense. And so I
No,
guess
so
when
sense.
it comes down, when it comes down to those kinds of things, I just try to pay attention to like her interests. Like she's really interested in like ballet and like dance, and, like gymnastics. Like right now, she's like a cheerleader at her elementary school. And so like those things kind of change sometimes, or like our budget and stuff changes, and we have to adapt to it. But it's so, I guess it's just so beautiful to see the resilience, and that like she takes like whatever she's into, she gives herself to. But like you said, sometimes like you're 6 and you're like, I want to do this, but I don't, but I do, but I don't, you know. And so it's just kind of you know it's kind of like with a car, like knowing when to hit the gas and when to like slow down. I just kind of like see what's happening.
I love that. I guess Clayson, let me ask you this from like your perspective. For your child, for your offspring, are you starting to see kind of are you starting to see the personality of your offspring? Like, oh, that's
Yeah,
me. Oh, nope, that's the wife a little bit. Jake's laughing because he gets it. He gets it 100%. Um, but are you starting to see kind of the personality starting to shine through a little bit? Kind of that cognitive awareness starting to kind of come into life?
it's funny. When he was like, since he was born, I've said he's had like a lot of personality, just because of like his facial expressions and reactions and things like that. But this last little bit, he's just he's so much more like aware, and I could see like this little personality like being built like stone by stone, and I could get emotional like talking about it. But it's really cool because there's definitely like there's a lot of the wife and I that I see like coming out of him, and yeah, it's really good. And he's really into eating right now. He's really into taking naps. He's been fighting the naps lately, but it's his choice to a degree. I guess you can't make him, but it's yeah. We're kind of just letting him carve his path.
I love
It's
that.
FOMO. You don't want to miss out.
Exactly. It's a real thing for babies. Like, because this whole world is all new to them. It's all exciting. It's all so cool. Like, they don't want to miss out on anything because it's like, well, you're making me go to sleep. Like, this sucks. You're rude, kind of thing. But no, you're totally right. It is FOMO. Um, I had a thought, but I lost it. What are some of the struggles for you guys? All right, sorry. Let's go back to this. What do your households look like? What do your households look like? What are some of those like shared responsibilities between you and your wives, like for your kids? Like, what do you guys take? What do you individually take on, and where does that kind of shared responsibility lie? And what are some of those responsibilities? I guess primarily for you, Jake, that you're also instilling in your kid, and how are you kind of? Because I guess a 4 month old can't really do too much around the house. Um, Not yet, at least. But how are you guys kind of instilling those different values? What does that kind of split look like between you and your wife?
Clayson, do you want to take the reins? Or
Um, I don't know. I feel like you said, there's not much, not a whole lot to talk about at the 4 month stage, but you know, I feel like it's a pretty even split. My wife just went back to work. She got another job. So that's been we've been trying to navigate that, and like the responsibilities of taking care of him while also like both working full time. But I feel like, with everything, there's like a good balance there that we're I feel like we're on it.
I can say that my dad wasn't around a whole lot when I was a kid. Like he was there physically sometimes, but he was never like checked in. You know what I mean? Like he was either like fishing or doing something else with somebody else's kids. Like he's a father to a lot of people, like mentor and stuff like that. He was never like, I don't know, there for me. And so for me, I overcompensated a whole lot in the beginning to where um like my wife like suffered from like postpartum, and so like I've always it's been kind of like a trait I've had to like really work to get away from, is to take everything on and not take care of myself, if that makes sense. And so like I changed like the majority of like dirty diapers for the longest time, which was mind blowing to any part of our family who is not used to like a male being around a baby. To where when you keep your kids at home when your wife goes out with her friends, you're not babysitting. Do you know what I mean? Like you're being a father. And so it took me a long time to get to this place of being like, okay, like by me taking everything on, I'm actually not letting her be like the mother that she wants to be. And so now it's very like I'd say like I want to say 50-50, but it varies where she works full time, and I'm like a stay at home dad now. Like I quit my job back in August because childcare was essentially my paycheck was just going straight to childcare, and I was like I could just raise my kids instead, you know. And so like usually we take turns like getting them to bed. In the beginning, like it was just me singing to them, John Mark McMillan, How He Loves, and just telling them stories and about when I was a kid. And now we've transitioned to Miss Honeybee. I don't know if you've seen Miss Honeybee on like
Mm-mm.
Spotify and YouTube, but she's like real soft spoken, like ASMR, And so like it's been an interesting journey.
Very cool. So, how have you guys adjusted to dad life in general? Like, what have been some of those struggles of becoming a dad? Like, what have been some of the hardest parts for you guys? Because being a dad, it's not all great all the time. Let's be straight up. It is honestly the happiest thing, it's the most fulfilling thing. There's nothing else that can compare, that will compare, or that ever might compare to being a dad, to being a father, especially to being an involved present dad. Jake, so many dads are probably listening to this right now, like, damn, I wish I could be a stay at home dad. That would be so dope. That'd be so cool. I tried working from home last week. Let me just tell you this. We had a snow day at work. They closed our office. They sent us home. Weather was awful. We were doing telehealth anyways. They sent us home. I tried working from home with my two kids. I don't ever want to do that again. I don't ever want to do that again. It was so stressful. It was so many redirections of gotta be quiet. I mean, also it was new, but it was just like as much as I ever wanted this, I don't want this. Um, like I shout out to stay-at-home dads out there. Shout out to stay-at-home moms, especially stay-at-home dads, because that's next level hard right there. So I commend you for that, sir. Hats off. Um, but it's being a dad's super hard. It's not easy. There's so many influences and factors along with it that come societal expectations, gender expectations, uh, all the expectations that come with being a dad, and it's super hard. So, what have been some of those really hard things for you to overcome as a dad, or what are some of those really hard things that you're working through currently on your fatherhood journeys?
I would say for me personally, adjusting to that I don't have me time anymore. Like it's like a struggle. Like when the kids go to sleep is when I get to be by myself or concentrate on things I want to do. Um, I used to be an avid gamer. I was like, staying up to like 4 o'clock Saturday nights, and which is it's actually much healthier for me not to do that, you know. But adjusting to uh, that it's not about like me and like what I want anymore. And even with like working from home or attempting to like I enjoy web development. I'm not a web developer. I enjoy like cybersecurity stuff and like trying to learn about that or like bug bounty hunt and things like that. And there's always like the pause button of your children being like, "Hey, can you help me with this or this or this?" And with three of them, it's. I mean, I'm sure you know how it is with the two. You know, and so getting used to. I think I listened to your last podcast episode, and the person was talking about how like it's their time now. It'll be my time again later, and like even with we've been thinking about like buying a house and things like that, and like right now we're just renting. Um, but like if we want like a big house with like so the kids can have the bedrooms, but when they move out, we're just gonna have a bunch of empty bedrooms. You know what I mean? And so just like trying to think, I guess generationally and not just here and now.
I think for that kind of what you just hit on, like, and this is for a later episode. You're gonna want to stay tuned. Little teaser for that. I got to talk to a really good friend of mine. His name is Dave. He hosts the Dad Space podcast. We were talking kind of about that concept. Him and his wife are empty nesters now. But he said that it's definitely different. It's definitely really hard having no kids. They were kind of forced into it because of COVID and living in Canada and all the restrictions and all that. That's a whole other thing. But he said that they decided to leave their rooms as their rooms. You hear all the time, we probably saw it like when we moved out, our rooms got turned into siblings' rooms or game rooms or entertainment or whatever they got turned into. They got turned into storage or whatever like that. So coming home didn't feel like home because now we're sleeping in a guest bedroom when our bedroom's right next door but filled with crap or games or whatever. So like that home aspect was like taken away from us. But essentially we want to create an environment to where we want our kids to be able to come back home. We want them to enjoy knowing that this is always going to be your home. This is always going to be a place of love where you're safe, where you're supported, where we got your back 100% of the time, no matter what that looks like. And that could be being in a big old house with lots and lots of room, or it could be the same apartment that you guys have been renting or same home that you guys have been renting for however many years, and then your rent paid off the mortgage. Uh, and when maybe that turns into something, who knows? But ultimately, it's just about creating that sense of home for your kids, knowing that they're gonna come home, they're gonna have mom and dad there, or some variation of it. Hopefully, it's always mom and dad, right? Um, and that they come home and that there's just love. They know they're home. They know that there's gonna be a warm meal. They know that there's gonna be a good time, that it's gonna be fun and laughter and enjoyable, and a place where they want to come back to. Ultimately, that's the goal, right? That's the generational goal, at least for myself, is to create a place where my girls no matter where I am, if I'm in a big house, if I'm in a place where I'm renting, whatever the circumstances might be, whatever it's going to be, uh, that they know that when they come back, they're home, that they're safe, they have a bed, they have their stuff, however they last left it, or as close to it as I can get uh, for them. I wasn't skipping you, I promise.
Oh, you're totally fine. I was just thinking about how like being a parent is it's like a culture shock. Uh, the best kind of way, but it is a culture shock because, like like Jake was saying, just to go off of him, it's like I suddenly matter less. What I want to do doesn't matter, at all, because now um, this tiny human who can't speak or uh, move themselves around really, at this point, is like dependent on me. So like it's so obvious, but like you really don't think about it until you're in the thick of it. Uh, and so like that's like the big adjustment. Like and like I said, it's in the best kind of way. Um, it's great, but that is huge to really realize that I was also like a gamer, like Jake was saying, staying up late and things, and you know, like just things like that. It's like it really makes you rethink like some of the things that you're doing or used to do, and really, I don't know how people um, have kids, and like I wouldn't judge anybody for you know how they're living life and making it work, but like if you're having kids, if you have kids and like uh, you're not changing your ways, like you're not trying to be better, then like I just don't understand. I say like yeah, it,
Um,
it's really like I don't know. Like I was joking a few times about how like I'm not into anything like destructive or bad, but I was like this kid makes me want to change my ways, and I'm like I don't. I'm not into like anything destructive. I'm not hurting myself really, drugs or alcohol or anything like that. But I was like, I'm like man, this kid makes me want to be better, and I don't know,
100%. Go ahead, Jake.
I think I was just gonna to touch on that. Um, I've reconciled with my dad, a whole lot recently, and one of the things that we talked about was how, one of the reasons that he wasn't there for me when I was growing up was because when he was growing up, his dad wasn't there for him, and it was like a catch up game later on. And so like there were like a ton of times when I was younger that my dad would either go like hunting or fishing or whatever, and it was never um it the majority of the time it was him trying to get to know his dad. But there's like that cycle of like neglect to where it's like instead of spending time with us and like, um uh I'm trying to think of the best way to put it. Instead of like spending time with us and like being a father to us, he was trying to make it for the time that he lost with his dad. And so like, being older and like wiser now, I guess I can look back and be like, okay, so that's why he wasn't there. I need to make sure that I don't fall into that same kind of thing, like of like neglecting my kids in order to like come to know the father that I didn't have. You know what I mean? And I just kind of to take time as it is, because like I mean, there are probably some situations. Well, not there are definitely situations to where people have children and then they don't like adapt or like take on different values or do this or do that. But I feel like sometimes it's just those little accidental things that like you don't realize like that you're destroying somebody. You know what I mean?
100%. And it's so important. Like, even like you were saying, Clayson, like sometimes there's nothing that you're doing that's bad to like society or whatever. Maybe you're not in addiction or have any of those like detrimental habits that could hurt you, hurt someone else, could kill you, take your life, or anything like that. Sometimes it's not that. But having a kid 1000% changes you. It makes you want to be a different person. It makes you want to be a better person in even the smallest way. Marriage changes you in those same aspects, but not nearly as much. Um, because it's a different level of understanding, right? It's like you're both adults. I'm not going to change you. You're not going to change me, but we're going to try to be better for each other and be the best like partners and that we can be for each other. Totally different kind of change. But when you're raising a baby from 0 to whatever, then it's gonna be something totally different because you have to teach them, you have to model for them, you have to set the example, you have to be all the things for them that you want them to be. And if you're not doing that, or you're not conscious about that, and you're not intentional about that, those are the key parts there, then you're probably gonna raise a little poop head that no one's gonna like. Because guess what? You're a poop head that nobody likes. And guess where they got it from? The apple does not fall far from the tree. I hate that saying because I always get tongue twisted. But the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And it's very obvious when you see a kid that's normally a jerk. You can more times than not tell, like, oh, the parents are jerks. I would say maybe 80-20. 80-20 rule kind of applies to this one because sometimes the kid's just a jerk. And maybe got a bad set of genes. Maybe they got, extra defiance, other diagnosis, or whatever that could be in play here. But 80% of the time, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree in that aspect. So that's kind of what it comes down to. But it also, for us raising kids, growing up, I'm not sure how old you guys are. I'm almost 30, so I'm a millennial. Are you guys also millennials?
I'm 32.
Millennial.
I'm sorry, I'm 28, so I'm a cusper, I think.
We'll count.
Cusper millennial.
I'll take you in with us. I'll take you in with us. So, we grew up kind of the generation that's ending. I want to say that's very close to being the end of toxic masculinity because it stems from generations right before us, probably the 2 generations before us. The way that our dads and our grandpas were raised, where they were raised in gender norms exclusively, nearly. Especially our grandfathers, maybe our great grandfathers, more so than anything, are boomers. Hence why, okay, boomer. Where they're raised in this mindset where it's like, oh, I'm a man. I gotta do all these things. I'm a man. I'm gonna come home. What's up, kids? Where's my beer? Where's my dinner? Kind of thing. The stereotypes that we think of for our grand kind of really started to break that to where, our dads were probably born in like 60s, 70s kind of thing. So they had a lot of extra influences, if you know what I mean, while they were growing up. So at least, but no, they kind of started to break these cycles because they haven't been any major wars that they went to. While they were, 18, 20 years old in the 80s, growing up in the 80s and the 90s. No major wars that they were shipped off to, so no major like trauma or PTSD. They got to see the technology come into their hands, the early stages of it, and got to see a lot of these things. And they kind of started to break these norms because that's when society started changing. Post World War II, de jure segregation was ended. So the legal segregation of people was ended. So they got to see a lot more integration. A lot of things really started to advance politically and socially and racially and gender wise. So they started to break a lot of these things. And then they had us, in the 90s. What a cool time to be born. What a lucky time for us to be born and to see everything that we've seen over the last 30 years plus. We've seen war, we've seen destruction, we've seen terror, we've seen more war, we've seen so many natural disasters. We lived through more ends of the world than our parents ever did or ever thought that they would see at this time. Granted, they lived through them too, but we grew up in them. I mean, I remember being in school when 9/11 happened. Kids now, our kids,
Yeah.
are going to read about 9/11 in their history books. We were alive for 9/11, which is absolutely mind blowing. Talking about that, and kids are just like, "What's 9/11?" And I'm just like, "What do you mean? What's 9/11? You un-American little brat." But no, we're really working on, and now for us being millennials, Gen Z, I think is after millennials, right?
And
Or
then
is it-
Gen Alpha.
Yeah, Gen Z, Gen Alpha,
You're right.
correct. Okay. So millennials, Gen Z's, dad roles, being the traditional dad roles where they barely change a diaper, they're barely involved, they're barely there. Studies are showing that more dads and more dads are more and more involved with their kids, excuse me. Um, and that we're changing this narrative around fatherhood. Our shows are taking that to change the narrative around fatherhood. But there's also that aspect of it to where destroying toxic masculinity was created by the world. It wasn't created by faith-based sectors or by the Bible itself. Granted, there was a lot of influence that came from that sector to the extreme, those things being taken out of context and to the extreme. But for you guys, and with your guys' background, kind of where you guys are at, how are you guys working on breaking that toxic masculinity in your homes, in your lives, and with your kids?
You want to go, Jake?
Sure. Sorry, I was not thinking about the storm the gates. So
That's a normal.
it
That'll
is.
happen. That'll happen.
But, for me, man, it sounds, I guess, kind of cliche, but what really helped me start to break the norms and stuff is to see how God the Father is and how Jesus is in Scripture, and just really coming to know Him and be like, wow, you're so much better than I thought you were, and you're actually like you're a good father, and like, gosh, I grew up with such I grew up in like religion and like all this anger and all this stuff, man, and it was like, come to find out, it was actually just based on my dad, you know, and so like to go from like to being like, wow, like to really know like the real thing really changed me. That I want to be good, and I want to empower my kids, and I want to I don't know, man. I really I don't want to see them go through what I went through, and like what you were saying, the generations before us. That I really want them to, and even with what you were saying before about the security of like always having a home. You know what I mean? Like I really I want them to know that they're safe here, and that they can be themselves here, and that they don't have to. Like there were so many times I wanted to run away when I was growing up, and like the movies don't help. Where it's like, yeah, this kid packs and goes, and I don't know, man. I really just like seeing like who Jesus was in Scripture inspires me to show my kids that masculinity in itself isn't the way that the world's portrayed it to be. And sometimes it's kind of hard when you watch like the older movies and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, that's a dad, but he could have done a better job, couldn't he? You know what I mean?
True.
Like not like ignoring, like what's going on, but like really I mean, I guess that's just kind of the way that I've been with. There's sometimes that we're watching something, whether it's on Disney or whatever, and my girls are like, he shouldn't have said that. I'm like, you're right. He probably shouldn't have.
True. We had
If
such.
that makes sense.
It does. We had such. The Bible. Clayson will let you go, and then I'll go.
Me and Jake have similar views, so like I could probably say word for word what he was saying, but I'm just like I'm to this place where I'm just like sick of this toxic masculinity, like we were talking about, where you know it's like be a man, but in scripture, in the Bible and things, be a man is defined like by Jesus, because Jesus is who we're, as a believer, as Christians, like who we're modeling our lifestyle and just everything we're doing after. And if it's not in Him, I don't want it in me. If that makes sense. When you say be a man through the lens of looking at Jesus, Jesus cried. Jesus was he wasn't controlled by emotions, but he was definitely moved by, he felt things deeply. He wasn't constricted. He was allowed to feel. He was allowed to say what he was thinking, and to say what he was thinking in like in a good way, not in a way of like that tears down or like that bubbles up and this bottled repressed emotions and in outbursts, but like in the most healthy manifestation, if that makes sense.
100%.
Like just knowing, like I grew up in a similar way, not really knowing, like I knew God, but I really saw him as like as an angry guy. I didn't really see him as like a good or loving father. I knew that like technically he was, because the Bible said so and everybody said so and don't question it. But uh, but in my adult years, in the last, I think I've been really following him like 4 years, 5 years now, something like that, and I'm just really coming to see that as far as like he's the good father, like he's the best father, like he is he is loving, he's compassionate, he loves his kids, and like that's just really that's helped me a whole lot in life in general, and like it's helped me as a new dad, because one, I get to experience my son, from a good perspective, from a good place, and not like a broken place. And two, it helps me like in my encounter and in my life with God the Father, because I get to relate to Him in this way, like having this thing that I love.
I love that. Jake?
So I was gonna say, while Clayson was speaking, it just kind of reminded me. There's a saint named Athanasius, and he's one of his best quotes is that the glory of God is man fully alive, and that's what we see. Like even with what Clayson was saying about like what you're saying about these fathers who are like very stoic and they didn't really show emotion and they didn't really do this or do that. Um, one of the things that we do, like that goes in all this, is like with life there's animation, there's moving. Like it's not just like you're like a statue. And I'm my grandpa was very stoic and he wasn't very expressive. But I like there's like I don't know, there are times and stuff to where uh you could see his barriers break down around us though, versus like being around like being a grandparent, like you soften up quite a bit, you know. And so it's I guess what's just so interesting is with what Clayson's saying is that like we grew up with a very stoic Jesus who wouldn't even dance, or and he went to a wedding and like made all this wine and all these things, and like people just try to sweep all that under the rug and just be like, you just got to look at this. And so it's like for me, I want to be animated and I want to be alive, and I don't want to like hold things back. Like I really want to show my kids that I love them.
100%. 100%. I think there's so much there. I'm very fortunate enough with my church. I had quite the religious journey. Grew up Christian till I was about 11, going to Christian kind of based church, and then at 11, uh, from 11 to like 22, so a good portion of my life, I was affiliated with the Mormon religion, Latter Day Saints. No longer affiliated there, and then my divorce happened about 3 years ago, and then I really fell off, just away from faith, away from God, away from Jesus altogether. And then it took until about probably 2-ish years ago, where it all really came back. I went to maybe 3 years now, that I went to a daddy daughter dance that was hosted by my church, and I had no clue. I'd never heard about this church. Never knew it was like literally down the street, around the corner from where I lived. Never heard of it. Went to this dance. And then after that, I just kept thinking about it. Kept thinking about it for probably two months. Like, yeah, I should probably start going to church again, start getting involved, and bring up that part of my life. And that was actually my aunt that encouraged me randomly to just she's like, go and try, just go and try it, check it out, see what it's about, see if you like it. I just absolutely fell in love with my current church. So now I'm very fortunate to where somehow, even though I hadn't been going to the church for a whole year, they asked me to. I was able to start subbing in children's ministry. And then I started helping with the Awana program and the Upward Sports program, so the different sports programs. Um, so very fortunate now I get to teach. I have a 5th grade class I teach every Sunday, and I get to teach council time at Awana. So I'm super fortunate and lucky that I get to do those things. Very blessed that is like my ministry now, is working with the kids. But it's super cool because I get to learn about Jesus' example and about God the Father's example, because they set just the perfect, most clear example of a father-son relationship. Everything that God did for Jesus or to Jesus or had him do for him all came from a place of love. All came from a place of understanding. Granted, God gave him the choice. He didn't say you have to absolutely do this or whatever, because God's a loving God. He gave Jesus the choice, and Jesus chose. He chose to do the things, and everything he did as an example to us. He chose to love people. He chose to wash his servants' feet. He probably washed poop off their feet and animal feces off their feet because they walked around barefoot in the dust. He served people. He talked to people. He served to then be able to minister to them. He loved them unconditionally. He healed the grossest people that society would view. Lepers, sinners. He stood in front of a woman who was getting pelted with rocks. Who else would do that? And I think that's such a powerful example for us as fathers, because he took the beating for his children. We are his children. He took the beating. He took the things. And I don't think that there's no reason that we should sweep the parts under the rug, like when he's feeding the 500 or however many, I believe it's the parable of the feeding the 500. I think it was more.
5,000.
5,000. I knew I was missing a zero. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. What's so wild is they didn't count women and children in those days. That's 5,000 families.
Yeah, so that you probably 3x that, 4x that. But you think he was really just like, here's your bread and fish, go away? No, he sat and he mingled with all those people. He talked to all of them, played with the kids, set the example for those families of how to love and just be together. And he probably brought people together as he was talking to one person over here. He's like, oh, there's that family over there. I think you'll really like them. Granted, those things aren't recorded, but you think Jesus was just out there just like, here you go, peace out? No, he rejoiced, he danced, he taught, he spent time with them, he spent time in the temples, he spent time with his disciples just talking and ministering and teaching. And of course, those are the things that are recorded in the Bible for our context. But you think he just was like, here's gospel, learn gospel, take gospel, preach gospel? No, there is a human aspect of that because he was a man just like us, and he taught and he interacted and he laughed. I guarantee you he laughed. So go ahead, Jake.
You got to think that kids are real fickle, man, and they love Jesus to the point that his disciples were like, hey, stay away, and he's like, hey man, yeah, let him come. And kids don't they're not attracted to everybody, man. There's some people that kids just don't like. And I feel like, what does it say about him that children were fighting to be with them? And I feel like our faith journey is very similar. I grew up in church around the time I was 14 or so. I prayed a prayer, but I didn't really know him. And so for years, man, I just wore this mask of I was addicted to pornography. There's guilt, shame, and all these things. We'll probably talk about before the episode's over. And then when I think I was 25, I had this encounter with him in my kitchen, not at church, like just to go on to say how good of a father he is, right? I had this encounter with him in my kitchen, and it completely changed me. And like that, he's not just a God who like will sit and like wait, but he like comes after you. And like if my girls or my son's like 19 months old, and like if our back door is open, he's gone. Like he's just running somewhere, and like I'm not just letting him run into the woods or whatever. Like I'm going after him, you know.
Yeah, he's always. I mean, Jesus is always going after the one. That's the parable of the shepherd, and he's always going after the
Yeah.
one. We're all the lost sheep. We're all the one, but he's coming after each and every one of us to save us, to talk to us, to rescue us, to be there for us, to love us, to bring us back to his fold and to into his mix and to into him. He's always after us to bring us back into him.
One of the things that's so interesting, I think, in Scripture, is that he never ran. He took time for everybody. He always walked. He took a boat here and there, but like you're like that's the whole thing. But he always he walked, and like everybody who was in front of him, he took care of and he loved, to the point to where everybody was being annoyed about it because they're like, Jesus, we gotta go. This guy's dying. You know what I mean? And I feel like it's the same thing with like even with what we were saying earlier about our busy lives as fathers, taking time to be like, if my daughter wants to spend like a few more minutes just watching it snow or watching it rain, like to take a step back and be like, this is what she's gonna remember, is that like she had a dad who waited, and like she had a dad who he wasn't. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've not been patient. I'm actually still very much learning how to slow down and how to hurry sickness is a real thing, you know? And but just come to this place of being like, if you want to enjoy the rain a little bit longer, I'm here with you.
100%.
Or like if you want to like watch YouTube on the TV, like I'm with you. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh no, you're good. I think that's one thing I always teach my Awana kids. That's one thing that I've taught this whole year so far, the school year, is from the very beginning. One of our very first lessons was about how Jesus was never late, but he's also never in a hurry. Jesus is time. He transcends time. If he wants to do something, or disciples are telling him, "Yo, this guy's dying," he's like, "Okay, I got it. Like, chill. I'm cool. It's cool. It's fine. Like, I'm not in a hurry. I'm not going to be late either. I'm going to get there when I need to get there," kind of thing. So just remembering, like, he's never late. He's never in a hurry. And I think that's so important for us to remember as fathers, like, well, sometimes we will physically be late, but that's okay because people will understand depending on the situation and whatnot. And they'll also being in a hurry, can take away from those beautiful moments that we get to enjoy with our kids.
Yeah.
Maybe it's those couple minutes of watching the rain, or a couple minutes more of snuggling, a couple extra minutes before bed. That really comes down to well, it's not that big of a deal. So what? It's okay. I think that's so important for you, Clayson, to like having a 4-month old to really just soak all those moments in. Like, yeah, I could put him to bed right now. He's happy, he's content, but I'm gonna enjoy this for a couple more minutes. I'm gonna enjoy this for a few more minutes right now. So go ahead. It's been Jake and I dominating this. Go ahead, Clayson.
You guys have a lot more experience than I do, but yeah, that's really one thing I've been trying to be very intentional about. I feel like with babies, newborn to however old, I think people a lot of times just are. It's like, well, we got to get through this. We have to, it won't be bad for forever. Blah blah blah. But I've been really just trying to like relish those moments in that way, where where I'm in the moment and not wishing that he was bigger and more dependent. But I'm like, this kid eats a lot. He eats often, but I'm known to be like, oh man, I gotta feed this baby. Like, there's so much going on, but you know, they won't be they're not little forever, and I think that's my way of being intentional, like you guys are talking about, is like just being thankful for where he's at right now, and I can watch him grow, but like not rushing him growing up, and not resenting uh, his dependency or the things that that a parent needs to do, and it's just been that's the place I'm in, and I feel like I'm better for it. That we're better for it as parents, me and my wife.
100%. And so, real quick, I'm gonna let you guys talk about this one. I'm gonna excuse myself for 40 seconds, use the bathroom real quick. But I'm gonna ask you guys a question, and I'm gonna let you guys both go. I still have my headphones on while I'm excusing myself. I'm gonna mute myself. But please talk about. Let's talk about some mental health here. Tell us about some of the things and how your mental health has been affected either before or since having kids. What have been some of the kind of the ups and downs, things that you guys have struggled with kids? Or no, not with kids, but since having kids. Like what has your mental state kind of been in? I know when I asked you guys mentioned that there's been some struggles with depression and anxiety. So let's jump into that. Let's share whatever stories you guys have around like your guys' own mental and emotional health. So I'll be listening, but I'll be back on camera in like 40 seconds.
Get it, Clayson.
Um, I try to think how I want to say what I'm trying to say. I feel like, not to like, this isn't like bragging or anything like that. I'm happier about it, but like I'm in a better I'm in a probably better place to have had a kid now than years ago. But like with it comes I wouldn't say like that the generalized anxiety, but like they do things that make you anxious and things, and you know that's I feel like being rooted and being solid is important, because parenting is a lot, and I only have one 4-month old. I could, with more, I could see it being even more so the case. But like, you know, of just like losing your mind, or being, because kids are wild, man. Kids are wild, and they take a lot out of you, because it is a lot of denial of yourself, and we talked about like losing me time and things like that. But yeah, that's my thoughts. That's where I'm at.
I think for me personally, I think imposter syndrome and really just dealing with, am I even qualified to do this? you know, like I think that's been like the biggest thing for me is, anxiety here and there. You find out pretty quick that children are way more resilient than you realize they are. Like I've watched Willow, and Willow's my oldest daughter, and I watched her and her sister Amara hit the floor hard, like jumping off couches and stuff. The things that if I did the same thing, I'd be like, man, I'm broken, and they just spring back up and just like go off and just hit it, And the same thing with with my son, and so as for me, like I know that every age and like all these things come with different situations to where Willow's not driving around. Like I'm not like concerned about her like on the roads, or unless she's not like working, so I'm not concerned like about that. And so really with what I think what's helped me a lot is taking it step by step and just being like, there's no reason for me to be concerned about uh her having her first car right now. Like it's a good thing to think about, but I can't do anything to influence that at the moment. And so we're just gonna keep going. Depression was something I struggled with really early on. Um, uh, it it was really bad. Um,
Was yours,
there
would
there
you
came
say,
a
Jake,
point.
for you, your depression, do you feel like it was also kind of some postpartum depression? Did it kind of correlate with that same timeline? And maybe
I
just didn't realize it was postpartum depression?
for me, I came into it depressed. Like
Okay.
I've suffered from it for a long time, and then it was really difficult in the beginning, but like it's one of the things that I dealt like a lot with like suicidal thoughts too, and like one of the things I had to fight with that I'm over now, praise God, but like one of the things I really had to fight with was like, would she be better off without me? Because like I didn't realize like what a lot I am to them. Do you know what I mean? And like I didn't like because like going back to the gender norms and stuff like that. It's hard to be a dad, and you're raised with seeing like my dad was like the provider of our household and all these things. So where like I don't have the education to provide like strictly for our house right now. You know what I mean? And so like to go to that place of being like, man, like I can't support my family the way that I want to support my family. Would they be better off with somebody else? That's something that I've struggled with a whole lot.
100%. And I think some of that you're talking about is, of course, I don't know the whole situation. I'm not your psychiatrist. I could be your therapist, but um, but some of that, especially if it's after your kid, it's really hard to recognize it for men. Um, but to recognize that postpartum depression, because we think that's only for moms, right? We really think a lot of that's just for moms, but it can definitely get worse. Like if you already were struggling with depression, already were working through like major depressive disorder or generalized anxiety, that can definitely get worse for men with having a kid. For a lot of the reasons that we've mentioned too, like a lot of what you were saying, Clayson, like you're giving up, or both of you guys mentioned, you don't have your you time that you did. Um, anymore until they're a little bit older, and maybe you find it after they go to bed, or maybe you get up earlier before them to have that time, because that's the only time you have to find the time, you have to make the time, you have to build it in, whatever that looks like, even if it's 20-30 minutes of playing your favorite game, you have to build it in, kind of thing for you. But you give up a lot of yourself as a father, especially like if your significant other is struggling. We put ourselves aside. Jake, you mentioned that you'd put your kind of needs and everything because your wife was struggling with postpartum depression. Um, and you put yourself aside, but at the same time, you also put aside your own postpartum depression, which came along with that because those thoughts, that ideation, was just chalked up to, oh, well, I was already struggling with this before, so it's nothing new. But it's like to that level and that extreme of like, would she be better off without me? Is it going to be okay? That's the postpartum depression that's just not talked about enough with like men, and how common that is. I would say, again, go back to the 80-20 rule. 80% of men most likely struggled with postpartum depression that are fathers didn't recognize it, while 20% did recognize it, which is definitely not okay because it's not. But the thing is that it's not treated for us. A nurse never asked you, I'm sure, after all three of your kids, or a doctor never asked you after all three of your kids, how you're doing, how you're feeling. Are you struggling with depression at all? Do you have any thoughts of hurting yourself, hurting the kid? Are you depressed at all? I guarantee a doctor never asked all three of us those questions ever, except maybe during our own annual physical when they have to ask us. Even then, when's the last time you actually had your annual physical and when they actually asked you if you were depressed or having those feelings of suicide or anything like that? Probably a very long time, at least for me. I don't remember going to my doctor and them ever asking me, well, except for after my divorce when I lost a ton of weight and my doctor was actually really worried, noticed it, and asked. But outside of that, like it's not asked in the process of having a kid how dad's doing, how you're feeling, how you're coping, how you're adjusting, are you feeling depressed? Because it does come along with being a father. There's a sense of loneliness. There is absolutely a sense of loneliness. It is the happiest yet loneliest time of your life because it's you get cut off, you lose yourself, you get lost in the sauce in the best and the worst ways. Um, and so it's really hard, and that's why it's so important to talk about it, to think about it, and to be able to validate it for yourself that shoot, I did struggle with postpartum depression. Those thoughts, they weren't just because I already had them, like those were new thoughts to an extreme because of my kid. Like I struggled with it. I'm better now, but man, that was hard. Um, so being able to recognize that and validate that for yourself And then Clayson, for you as well, it's these next couple years, the first 2 years are super hard. Like they're super freaking hard. Um, the sleep, the paranoia, the anxiety, it all can be triggered. Not getting you time, not getting time with your spouse, all those things they're going to be really hard. Uh, Once they're about 2 years old, it becomes really fun to be a dad. Um, in all honesty, like two is kind of that gold 18 months to two when they start walking, talking back, where they're way more durable than we think they are. Like Jake was saying, they're so durable. They're so resilient. They bounce back up. Like my 3-year-old, literally at like 18, between like 12 and 18 months, would run into a wall and just go donk, would just audibly make the sound effect. She was fine. She just ran into a wall and she has a little bump on her head, just donk. That's it. And so it's so cool to like be a dad, but it's also so important to recognize these things with yourself. To recognize like, man, I'm struggling. Maybe I need to talk to someone. Maybe I need to go and get myself checked. Maybe I need to talk to my partner, my significant other, my wife about some of these things I'm feeling too, um, and just let her know like, hey, I'm feeling kind of down. I don't know what it is, because your wife, she probably knows you pretty freaking well at this point. Um, and so she can do that. Or if it's not your wife, communicate with her like, hey, I think I want to go I talked to one of our associate pastors at my church. Every few weeks I'll set up an appointment with him if I'm struggling with something or kind of where I'm at mentally, just to check in and talk to him, to have that support, get that perspective, and to kind of talking about it a little bit more in that kind of platform, to where it's like brings it back to faith and to the Bible and to a place. Also, I'm super lucky. My church is literally adjoined by a little hill of like things to where I work. So it's super easy to make an appointment and then literally walk over and like say, oh, hey guys, I'm just here to talk to Matt, kind of thing. So, and if your church doesn't have an associate pastor named Matt, is it even a church? Uh, because every church does, I swear. But uh, yeah, that's my soapbox. I'll step down and let one of you guys take it if you want, unless there's anything to add to the whole mental health part of it.
Yeah, I can't speak for everybody, but I'm really thankful. We've talked about our relationship with God and stuff, and that keeps things in perspective for me, and that helps me with my, as it has for years, mental state and things. I'm like, I don't know what I would do if I wasn't in this place. So that's really all I can add to that.
I love that. All right, Jen. So you guys ready to jump into the YDP3? Any other thoughts? Anything else that we want to cover? Actually, we'll make the YDP4 today, just because we can. And anything else you guys want to add in there?
I think I'm good.
For sure. All right, so we'll start with we'll make the YDP4 today. 3 questions. It's normally the YDP3, 3 questions I ask all the guests. I'll give you guys both a chance to share for each of them. The first one, we'll start with the fun one, and then we'll get into the 3. What's your guys' take here? I think we can settle a debate, not forever, but at least between us 3. Does pineapple go on pizza?
Pineapple was made for pizza, I'm pretty sure. Like, pineapple was created and waited for hundreds and thousands of years for pizza to be created. So,
Wow.
absolutely.
It's a strong take. Jake?
We tried to this, and then pizza came along. It's like, oh, this is what this was for.
For years, I wasted my life not eating pineapple on pizza, and I'll leave it there.
I think I'm just gonna delete this whole show now. I'm just kidding. I'm not a fan. It should not go anywhere. It can go on yours, but it does not go anywhere near mine. It will never be on my table. If we ever end up getting pizza together, I will sit at a different table. If you guys are eating pineapple on pizza, I will literally excuse myself because I will not be at that table. That's where I land on that. So you guys have fun with that. You guys can be disgusting in public if you want, eating that on your pizza, but that's on you. I'll go and sit with the kids and eat our normal pizza outside of that. Any kids that want to join me, can join me on that adventure there. So the first,
They're usually
what was that?
to be. They're usually eating pineapple on pizza. To be fair, so good luck with that.
No, I like pineapple. I love a good pineapple. I love a good, fresh, cold pineapple spear, pineapple chunks. Like, I will buy canned pineapple chunks. My kids and I will just eat them from the can. They'll go with dinner or lunch or whatever. I love pineapple. I love fruit. I love pineapple in general, but it's not touching my pizza. Pizza's meant to be savory and salty and meaty and greasy. It should
And
not.
sweet.
It's not meant to be sweet. It's not meant to be sweet. No, no, no. Sweet is for dessert or for like a cookie pizza or something that's specifically made to be like a sweet dough for like maybe a cookie pizza or whatever, but it's not meant for a traditional like hearty savory pizza itself. Um, but we could go all day on that. First question of the YDP3 is, where are you rooted? And by rooted, I mean it could be physically like where you are rooted, like where you live, but you could also interpret it to like what are your core values, what makes up the innermost workings of who you are. And we'll shoot to Clayson on this one first.
Uh, physically, I guess I'm rooted in Neon, Kentucky. Um, but uh, in any other sense, I'm rooted in, I guess, like we talk a lot at our, like amongst Jake and I, and then our church and this and that about identity, about being who God made us to be, um, and who He says that we are. And so that's become my rooting and my foundation over the last few years, is that no matter what, I'm this, I'm loved, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, I am loved by God. And that's firm, like that won't be shaken even when I am, and I'm really thankful for that.
Go ahead, Jake.
I live in a smaller part than Clayson, so I'm like 20 minutes away from Clayson. So I could just say that I'm rooted physically in Kentucky. It's not big enough to even say the name of it, but I would say like a part of my core values would be creativity, that we were made by like a creative God who the very first way he expresses himself is as a creator. And so I believe inherently we are all creative, maybe not in the same way of like drawing or comics or this or that, but like we all have this sense of creativity about us. And the only other thing I would say about that is that we are dearly loved to the point to where um, I believe it's his mercy that sustains us. He actually, like, a part of my core values is he delights in us to an extent that we can be real with him. That when we're disappointed, we can be like, God, like what the heck, like David, man, just be like, where were you? Where are you? And like let that turn into like from lamenting into like this place of being like, but I know that you're good. Like even though like we're struggling here or there, like I know that you're good.
Love that. And the next question here is, what grounds you? Like when you're feeling all stressy and depressy or anxiousy, uh, my favorite saying, stressy and depressy, overused, overplayed on the podcast, but it's the best way to phrase this question. When you're feeling all the emotions, where you're all the way at the top and you really need to come back down to earth, what are some things that help you ground yourself, bring you back down, and snap you back into reality?
Um, I I feel like a broken record, but it's like I
Okay.
was talking about in the last question. Like God really, He grounds me out. He puts me in perspective, and also I would be remiss if I didn't mention my wife. Like she keeps me straight. I guess like like she grounds me out, even like in the times I am freaking out or I am out of sorts. Like she has a really good way of putting things in perspective and pulling me back in, I guess.
For sure. Jake?
I would say for me, I kind of gave you the sauce a little early, man. I should have saved some. Um, for me, man, like to do like a brain dump and to like really to process what I'm feeling. Like what I was saying with like David. Essentially, all my journals are just like the Book of Psalms over and over again. To where it's like if I'm anxious or if I'm in this place of being like I'm really irritated, I'm like there's so much stuff going on here. I need to get it on paper so I can see what's happening. If that makes sense. And so that's kind of what grounds me is just to sit down and process and just kind of see where I'm at, what I'm doing, and kind of hit the pause button.
Love that. Love that. All right. Last question here. I'll give you guys both a chance to answer this one because this one's good. So let's say I make my way out to Kentucky. I actually have some family out in Kentucky, so it's good to know that I got some extra friends out there. Love Kentucky. I haven't been since I was a very small child. Barbecues next to none. Love Kentucky food in Kentucky. Ooh, so good. Anyways, got off track. Let's say we're all at a park together. I don't know you guys, or I don't. So you guys are individually at a park, and I'm there at the same park with you at the same time. Different days, but at the same park, right? I see you. You're playing or hanging out with your kids, and you just look happy, joyful, like you got the secret sauce, the secret recipe, or whatever. And then you look across the park. We make eye contact. Classic love story, right? I see you across the park.
Yeah.
Uh, and I look at you, and you look at me, and you're like, "Whoa, that guy looks down, sad, depressed, like just like super unhappy. Like you can just tell, like that's the vibe I'm putting off. I don't want to be at the park. I don't want to be here at all. I'm miserable. All the things." We make eye contact. I see you. Like, wow, that dude looks happy. He looks genuinely happy. And then I start to walk over to you because classic love story, of course. Keep that in mind. I start to walk over to you and I sit down next to you and I'm just like, "What are you doing, man? Like, how are you so happy? What is your sauce? What is your recipe? Because what's in your barbecue sauce? Because I don't have that recipe. I don't have that sauce. I'm down. I'm in the dumps." And you're like, "Yeah, you can see, you saw that." You're like, I see that. Duh. Uh, and I'm just like, what are you doing that I'm not doing? Like in that moment, you get to tell me one, maybe one and a half pieces of advice to me in that moment. So if you listen to the show, you're probably familiar with this question. But what are you telling me in that moment as your one kind of one and a half pieces of advice?
Broken record once again. That's the warning. I would say like, man, I don't know what's going on, but it's like Jesus loves you and I love you, and that's what it's all about. And for the half bit, it's like look for beauty in ashes. Look for the silver lining. Like it's all about perspective.
Jake?
I would say really corny joke and try to make you laugh first because we're in love, right? And Clayson totally stole. He went 2.5 pieces. It's not fair.
Not
Honestly.
fair. No.
Because I was gonna say I think it has to do with perspective and the way that we see things. That this is what I'd say to you, and just to delight or to find pleasure in where we're at and what we're doing, no matter how small, without giving you a whole book. Because I want to give you a book. I'd share my email address with you and be like, let's get up, let's hang out.
I love that. No, I love that. I've had so many great answers to that question. Those are just two more for the book. One day I'll put a whole compilation together of all the answers to these questions. One day, not today. But you guys, thank you so much for your time. Thank you to our listeners for listening and getting through this with us. It's been super fun talking to you guys. Go ahead and tell all the people where they can find more about you guys, more about your shows, or just more of you guys. Go ahead and plug yourself away.
Yeah, so our podcast is the Rad Dad Roundtable on we're on Spotify and Apple Podcasts at the moment. And our Instagram, you can find us there. That's our main well, I don't know. I'm not on the X, Twitter, whatever it is. So I don't know. But I know I usually use the Instagram, and that's at Rad Dad Roundtable.
Well, guys.
We
Oh, go ahead. Go
have
ahead.
X. Sorry. I forgot to plug the Twitter X Twitter.
Which is currently just a gif of Sinistar.
I love that. Yeah, guys. Well, it's been a pleasure. It's been awesome talking to you guys. Listeners, make sure you guys go and check out Rad Dad Roundtable. You can find them on Instagram at RADDADROUNDTABLE. Wow, that was a
We wanted to make it as long as possible.
yeah. Well, I mean, mine is Young Dad Pod, YOUNGDADPOD. So I mean, super. It's hard to fit a podcast name into a handle, I found. But on that note, thank you guys so much. It's been super fun talking to you guys. Let's see if our audience is still with us. They usually are at this point. They didn't go home.
Thank you.
All right. It's stopping. It says it's stopping.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you guys. Hold on.